All right, and welcome to the first episode of the Unheard Truth podcast. I am your host, Warren,
Afternoon.
Kaden.
I'm Fernando.
I'm Kieran.
and welcome to the first official episode. Today, we are going to talk about high school sports, their pros and cons, and basically what students of today get out of doing high school sports. We're talking about this because all of us have experienced high school sports one way or another, and we all have our own opinions over the effects of it, whether they're good or bad. So today we're going to talk about that. We've kind of felt recently in our discussions that this needs to be talked about because not only are high school sports good for students, but in some cases it can be bad. In certain conditions, discrimination is out there, uh, and there's concussions, the controversy with said concussions, and so on and so forth. So, starting off, the ability to take criticism and work collaboratively. Now, do y'all believe that this is a pro or a con?
Pro for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 100% a pro. I don't see anything that could go wrong with it.
Oh, absolutely. Just it's a good feature to have.
Do you guys have any like examples of how high school sports has allowed you to, have the
Oh,
ability to take
abs-
criticism?
yeah, I have that experience. I play baseball, and what we get is constructive criticism on how to better our game. Like for instance, pitching. Didn't know anything about pitching before I played baseball, and just took criticism from the coach, just helping me get better at pitching and hitting and just playing the sport in general. It just really helped a lot. And then working collaboratively with my team, it builds a bond. So, and when you go out on the field as a team that has a special bond, um, it works out in the end.
Anyone else have their own experience as to whether you know high school sports has helped them take criticism?
Recently I just started doing cross country, and criticism has been a big part of that because before I was never able to run long distance, and with criticism it helped me with my stance, being able to like listen to people and not get upset at them because that was a problem with me before, and I would just want to like do my own thing. It helps me and it benefits me, and I just 100% know that criticism, no matter if you don't want to believe it, most of the time it will help you in the long run.
Very good, very good. Now up next, self-esteem. Do you guys believe that this is a pro or a con of high school sports? I feel like everyone has their own opinion on that. Anyone want to start us
It
off?
can
I feel
be
like
it can be
I feel like
both, to be honest.
yeah, it could go either way.
Any examples?
Well, self-esteem. It's when someone doesn't like feel that they're the best on the team. Like for instance, if you make the B team in football, like you feel like you're not as good or not good enough to be on the A team with all the good players. So like you can really feel down about yourself. But sometimes, for instance, you'll realize it's not such a bad thing, and then the sports does help you build your self-esteem and make you feel more confident in your body and give you a healthy mind. So.
Brendan,
Def-
any experience?
Self-esteem. Some experience I had with it is like as you improve through the sport, feel like I'm doing this, I'm getting good at this, and can I go? I want to be the best. Like if you have that mindset, self-esteem can like be your best friend. But on the other side, sometimes you're like, I'm in the lower half of my team. I've been trying so hard and I'm just barely progressing. Why even try? And that's like the worst mindset to have, but a lot of people have it. A huge negative to sports because you'll take that mindset and you start applying it to other things in life.
Kaden?
Well, I mean, like, it could go either way. So it could help you, like, if you have, like, self-esteem issues with, like, your body or, like, the way that you look, sometimes, like, it could help with that, like, getting in shape or whatever. But it could also, like they said, if you make a different part of the team or something, or you don't make the team, then it could, like, mess that up. So it could go either way.
Fernando, do you have any stuff on it?
Yeah. I mean, playing soccer. If you have good shots, good passing, you get praised for it sometimes, and that builds up your self-esteem and stuff. But again, it could go either way because if you miss shots or you mess up during the games, and you start to feel real low about yourself, start saying you suck or whatever, it could really drop your self-esteem.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with everyone here, and pretty much say it can go both ways. And I think it kind of comes down to a personal perspective. If you're more of a person who has a higher self-esteem just solely based off your prior experience or even current experience, like if you are on the A team, you'll usually think it's more of a pro, like it affects you more of a pro. But coming from someone who criticizes themselves a lot on everything, I can tell. For me personally, I feel like sports has had a negative impact on me solely because of the amount of pressure I put on myself, and that's what's kind of interesting, is because the whole self-esteem part comes down to the person, and it's not like something that you can place on the entire like high school sports in general, because I think it comes down to more of a personal thing. But definitely, it goes both ways because as a goalie in soccer, like I've saved shots that have made me feel good about myself, but I've also missed shots and it's destroyed me. But overall, I would say it's more of a positive thing because every shot that you do save, you know, it helps you more. Up next, we have work ethic. Anyone else want to start us off?
Um, I'll start us off again. Why not? So, I think sports really helps you with your work ethic, because if you players in whatever sport you're playing, you see how good they are, and they trained a lifetime just to get where they are, and they worked hard to get there. So it's really a drive to like get you to work harder in your sport, and it helps you build character, and you could take that over into the real world if you get a other job besides playing sports. So like if you go work in a business or landscaping or something like that, it'll just drive you to work harder at everything you do.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Um, Actually, never mind. Someone else go.
Caden, Brendan?
Work ethic for me, being affected by sports. I think the work ethic is, a lot is what was said just before, how you learn to push yourself no matter what to get what you want. And if you can push yourself through the sports and you can like, I don't really want to do this, but I need to do this, you can apply that to almost anything in life, whether it's job or that you need to do or just working in general. Like I just feel like being able to push through the things you don't want to do is super important.
Caden?
Um, I mean, yeah, basically just like what they said, but it can also like time management is also like a big part if you're in sports, and so it could help you like learn how to manage all your time better and make sure you get everything done that you need to. I don't know. Everybody else basically said what I've got, so.
Oh, excuse me. All right, next one. Positive body image. Do y'all feel that this is of a pro? Like, I feel this is more of a. Do you agree that it makes you have a positive body image or not?
Yeah, I think it ties in with self-esteem, kind of, because If you look at your body and you love the way you look and all that, it helps you build your self-esteem more. So I think they really go together, and I definitely think sports helps build your body and make you healthier because you're getting a lot of exercise in whatever sport you're doing. So I completely agree with positive body image as a pro.
Yeah.
I'm gonna follow
That
up.
he
I'm gonna follow
Go
up
ahead.
on Kieran really quick and just say that from all the sports that I know that I've played, it helped me develop some pretty strong legs, and that's always been one of the things that I've always liked about myself, and that came from doing sports. So I've definitely seen a bigger feeling of positive body image from doing sports.
Yeah, but when it comes to body image, there is a negative aspect of it. For instance, locker room talk. If you're already fat to begin with, as an example, there's always gonna be people, that like say stuff about you and stuff, and that could always like lower your self esteem. It could be considered as bullying sometimes, but it could be a con of how you look at yourself. But by playing sports and dedicating yourself, it can definitely improve the way your body looks, and it can make you healthier in general.
Yeah, I got a little story for this one actually. I'm not gonna drop any names, but back in middle school, there's this kid, and he was always on the heftier side, and he could never run the mile, and there's so many things that he couldn't do, but he never let it get in his way, and he drove, and by the end of the year, he looked 100 times better, and he was so proud of that, and that was his drive, just to get the body image he wanted. I feel like for a lot of people, it's either a drive or an anchor.
Nice. Up next, we have demoralization and bullying from coaches. My bad. Now, I think we can pretty much obviously say that this is a con. Uh, you know, obviously bullying from coaches is not going to be a positive thing. Does anybody have any experience with this though?
Hmm. Bullying from coaches. I can't say that I have personally. I mean, if you ever played football, the coaches, they're not the nicest, but they're just trying to motivate you any way they can. So I guess coming off really harsh and like aggressive kind of motivates some people to work harder. I don't know if that works for everybody. Not me personally, because it feels like I'm doing something wrong, but it might work for some people. But in my book, it's just a con. So,
I mean, haven't really had a lot of coaches that have really been rough. I would say more. I've had more coaches that work off of positive reinforcement than negative. I mean, the only real thing I have like memory of that's ever been really just like negative enforcement was like when I played little league, but that was just a coach being not a coach and more of just like an angry dad or something. And yeah, and it was more of just like
oh,
him saying do good, don't suck, uh, and not so much coaching. But that's its own thing. I'll go
yeah.
ahead. I'll go ahead and expand this kind of topic to not just from coaches but from peers, because I feel like that happens a lot more than from coaches. So if anyone has any experiences on that, speak now.
Well, okay, so first I'm just gonna say like I think we like with the school that we go to, I think we got a little lucky on that because of the things that our school believes in, our coaches believe that as well because most of them work for the school. And so we probably wouldn't wouldn't experience that as much as other schools would. Um, but you never know. I don't know.
Um, I'd say bullying from like other athletes or peers. I personally, I feel like it's a bigger problem than a lot of people realize, like on a small scale. So, like, example of the baseball team that I was on. it's all the little small things that people say, like, "Wow, you really messed that one up," or "Wow, you could have done so much better. You sucked." Like you might not seem like it's that big, but once those add up, like you can really start to doubt yourself. And I feel like, but just not to the scale that a lot of people think.
People don't realize that the things they say, no matter how small they think it is, it can still affect the other person far more
Oh
than they
yeah.
believe that it can.
Well, I can relate to Brendan's story for sure, because especially on my baseball team currently, I think everybody has a specific nickname, and some nicknames are nicer than others, but I mean there are those main ones, and sometimes like they don't intend them to hurt anybody, but just everybody reacts to different things on a different level. So it's just you can't really how do I say this? You can't really give someone a name that like they might take to heart and then they just feel bad about themselves because they have that name and they can't do anything about it.
A lot of people won't stand up and say, "Hey, can you stop calling me that?" Because they're already getting bullied, and they're like, I'm gonna act tough, so they get off me about it.
Yeah, you have to be careful with like the team nicknames and stuff because you never know what you think is funny. It may actually affect that person in a negative way.
Well, I mean, a good thing to go by on this is just the less you react to your nickname, like if you laugh at it or if you just instantly get angry about it, the less you react towards that nickname. If you ever hear you being called it, just don't react whatsoever. Because if you don't react, then they won't call you it because they're only doing it to get a reaction out of you. So if you just don't react, nothing will happen.
Nando,
Or
got anything
just
on it?
straight. I was gonna say either that or just straight tell them that you don't want to be called that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Next thing, unhealthy pressure or healthy pressure. Like just pressure in general.
What do you mean
Like
pressure? Like how would that tie into
Pressure,
sports?
like pressure from, saving the goal, hitting the hit, catching
Ah,
the throw.
Like just the overall pressure of like being
Just
on a
overall
team.
pressure from playing a competitive sport. Do you think it's
Yeah,
healthy or
from
unhealthy?
coaches, teammates, people watching, yourself.
well, I can see the unhealthy aspect of it for sure. Because if there's too much pressure on you, depending on the person you are, you could either react completely wrong or and just completely screw it up, and then you just feel even worse. Because that's what pressure can sometimes do. But healthy pressure, I mean, sometimes it's good, I would say, because it motivates you more to try harder at whatever you're doing.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Oh.
Um,
Hmm?
Pressure. Most of the time, I put the pressure on myself. That really like, I keep on thinking about it, and I'm like, I don't want to mess this up. Don't want to mess this up. Don't want to mess this up. And what do you do when you think about something? You're not thinking about what you need to do, and and a lot of times you'll mess it up. So self pressure for me all the time.
I do that, and I mean it's not technically a sport, but like with theater and drama
Okay. All
it
right.
up, and
Oh,
everyone like
Yeah, I can understand that because because especially with theater and drama, you have to memorize a whole bunch of lines and different like
yeah,
acting parts that you have to do. It's easy to mess that up because it takes so long to memorize it, and if you think too much on it, like everything could go wrong.
yeah,
So
and then
I
I'm
can.
like that. Yeah, and I'm the kind of person like if I mess up, I won't let it go. I beat myself up about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like that too.
um, feelings of superiority. So obviously this one's a con, but do you have any experiences with feelings of superiority or
like
seeing
Mm.
you feeling superior only or like feeling inferior as well?
both?
Actually, with
Hmm.
this one, I feel like a lot of times where this comes from is team captains.
Yes.
So somebody gets elected team captain, which it's good because there's a leader of the team, but at the same time, a lot of people think, oh, he's got this, he'll tell us what to do. Or they'll be like, why even try? He's the best. I'm never going to be as good as him.
Yeah, that's
Opinion,
Well,
it's a negative a lot of the time.
Yeah, and
well,
instead of
it's
becoming a leader, they start becoming a boss instead because they feel really superior sometimes. Not all
Yeah.
the times, but it could turn out like that sometimes.
well, it's like not even just that. It's like if you're facing the opposing team, and they're like just constantly knacking on you and just saying like, "Oh, we're the best," and you're awful. Like I hit home runs every day of the week and stuff like that because they think they're superior to you, and it's definitely like a con because it just beats you down so much, or just like you lose focus completely on what like you're supposed to be doing.
yeah. Uh, I mean, my only real personal experience with it is just like the whole thing with like varsity and junior varsity. Like,
Yes.
if you get placed on junior varsity, like a lot of the times, or I mean, sometimes like it could really be a downer, especially if you're like a lot older, or at least older than a lot of the kids. And in my specific case, you know, uh, I was the older person, but the younger goalie in this example, he had more experience, so he got on to varsity, and I was put on junior varsity, and that really messed with me because I felt like varsity in itself is just like it just seems like superior to junior varsity, and I feel like sometimes while people may joke that they'll be like, "Woo, varsity! We're on varsity, and you're not." Obviously it's one big joke, and no one really honestly cares that much because varsity players on the team that I was on had just as much fun playing on junior varsity. Honestly, it in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. But like I said earlier, depending on the person, it can really affect them, and that can really be a
Yeah.
give a feeling of inferior and superior and stuff like that.
Well, I think what people lose sight of is that you play sports to have fun, and like that's the main goal that you want to get out of sports is having fun and just being successful at it. So I
Mhm.
think people lose sight of it because all these cons, uh, on this like all the cons that we just discussed, like people lose sight of what the meaning of playing sports actually is, and I think it's really detrimental to their like mind and body. So
I think people lose sight of like what you said, like the main point of sports, because of it's such a competitive thing. People make it so competitive when I mean, like it doesn't. It's not supposed to be. You're supposed to have fun, and whether you win or lose, you're still supposed to enjoy the experience. And people lose sight of that because they think they have to win.
well, I mean, it wouldn't even be fair if you won every single time. I mean,
Exactly.
because if you never lose at anything, then like you're just gonna walk around. You could just be cocky as can be. That's not really good because like you have to experience losing at least once to gain a new respect for the game that you're playing. So
When you wouldn't learn anything if you always won, you'd never learn how to improve or get better.
that's true.
All right, up next we have strained relationships and friendships.
Hmm. I cannot relate to this particular topic because it's just I'd never really heard of it where I come from, but maybe somebody else has.
I mean, I kind of have one, and this isn't necessarily high school sports. This is more of just like of my time when I was on an esports team. Uh, but I mean, this all kind of relates in general. Um, when I was on an esports team, we had it's a competitive game, and basically, if one person messes up, it loses the entire game for everyone. And we had this teammate, and he's always been a real close friend of mine. I've known him for years. He's a Canadian. He's he's an overall great person, right? But he always threw the game, which means he lost the game for us. Um, but and eventually they had to cut him from the team, and he basically saw that they released him and he basically got the idea that I told them to, because I was the team captain and I always called out the fact that he was messing up, and it was overall my decision to boot him from the team. And honestly, that strained our friendship. We're still friends to this day, but definitely the whole sports team aspect, if you get too into the game, it can really just like strain your friendships if you have to make a hard decision and things like that.
Well, even like with people, like if they're not on your team and you have practices, like you have to practice a lot. You have to go to all the practices because you have to have that thing with your team that like um I lost the word. Like you have to be able to depend on your team, and sometimes you can't like go out and do other stuff with your other friends because you have practice and you can't just skip out on practice. And so some people with certain mindsets will assume that you're choosing that sport or those people over them when you're not, and they just don't understand that, and so it messes with that like relationship or friendship because they don't understand if they don't play the sport or whatever.
Anyone else got
Oh
anything?
yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I think I do have a story actually. So me and a friend were discussing how our favorite sport was baseball, of course, and that we thought soccer was like not a good sport. We didn't like it whatsoever, and it kind of like, of course, people overheard it, and then we got into a huge argument about it and why we don't like soccer and why they don't like baseball and like why soccer is the worst sport and whatnot. And I mean, I learned something from it. It's like you have to be respectful towards other people's sports, because just because you think it's it sucks and it's the worst sport ever doesn't mean they think it. So I learned that, and now I just I learned just keep my mouth shut and whatnot. So I did kind of it kind of rattled a friendship. I wouldn't say I lost any friends about it. It just rattled it. So it just I think they lost a little bit of respect for me because of me bringing up stuff like that. So
It's one of those things like everybody has an opinion and you're going to disagree with people. There's no getting around that.
yeah, for sure.
Overall, I think that high school sports is more of a pro than anything. Even
Yes.
though even though we've said that there's a lot of cons to it, that's all very circumstantial, but the overall like pros that are secure, and like you'll definitely get these benefits from high school sports and just from sports in general. It's more of a pro.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's going to do it for our first official episode of the Unheard Truth podcast. I am your host, Warren, and we'll see y'all next episode.
See y'all.
Bye.
Later.
Bye.